It was a quiet Sunday morning, with sunlight streaming through the windows. Kim Bennett was preparing breakfast in the kitchen. The toaster filled the air with an appetizing aroma, and the coffee maker bubbled away with a comforting sound. A simple but lovingly prepared breakfast of croissants, scrambled eggs, and seasonal fruit was being arranged on the small dining table. "Mom, look!" 12-year-old Emma came running down the stairs, holding a ballet recital flyer. The light pink paper displayed the golden letters announcing next month's performance of Sleeping Beauty. The silhouettes of ballerinas in leotards danced across the page, symbolizing Emma's dreams. "Emma, don't run on the stairs," Kim gently admonished while stroking her daughter's head. "But I'm so happy for you. Your father would be proud too." Emma's expression turned momentarily sad, but she quickly regained her bright smile. Since losing her husband in a car accident 2 years ago, Kim had been living with and supporting her daughter. Their weekend breakfast time had become an irreplaceable ritual for both of them. As a tax accountant, Kim earned $90,000 a year and lived modestly in a small house in the suburbs of New York. Though there was no mortgage thanks to a substantial insurance payout, they couldn't afford luxuries given Emma's ballet lessons and education expenses. Still, their bond was strong, and they lived happily together. Meanwhile, a very different morning was unfolding at a mansion in Westchester County's upscale neighborhood. "I don't like these curtains' color. Replace them immediately." Diana Williams was giving stern instructions to her maid. As president of Williams Estate, every aspect of her life was conscious of upper society's eyes. Weekend parties hosting political and financial heavyweights were routine, and each time, the mansion was adorned with new antique furniture and artwork. She reigned as the queen of social circles. Since losing her husband early on, controlling her daughters' lives according to her wishes had become her reason for living. "Mother, could you please do the final check on the wedding flowers?" Amber sat on the sofa with her smartphone in hand. Though she worked as a nurse at New York General Hospital, it was merely for show. Her annual salary of $42,000 couldn't maintain the luxurious lifestyle her mother provided. In reality, she depended on her mother for most of her living expenses and lived according to her wishes. "Of course, dear. It's your special day." Diana smiled with satisfaction. Amber's fiancé, John Carter, held the title of vice president at Carter Investment. He was a successful businessman who had built his fortune through dedication to work and lived in a luxury apartment. This marriage was expected to further elevate the Williams family's social standing. At the Grand Plaza Hotel, preparations for tomorrow's wedding were reaching their final stages. The ceremony, with a budget of $3 million, would host 1,000 guests. Government and business dignitaries, and a $100,000 wedding dress. Everything had to be perfect. As staff members made final checks on the ceremony arrangements, a seating chart lay open on an office desk. In the far corner of the last row, Kim and Emma's names were written in small print, symbolizing their position in this lavish wedding. The Grand Plaza Hotel's main hall sparkled like a white jewelry box. A massive crystal chandelier hung from the 33-foot ceiling, catching the morning light and creating rainbow reflections. An arch of pure white roses adorned the altar, while rare orchids from New York's prestigious families lined both sides of the aisle. The air was filled with the fresh fragrance of gardenia and jasmine. Everything is proceeding as planned. Wedding planner Jessica Morris nodded with satisfaction as she completed her final check. Over 100 staff members were already in position to serve the 1,000 guests. Politicians, entrepreneurs, and social elite, the guest list read like a who's who of New York high society. In the kitchen, chefs were busy preparing specially ordered Wagyu roast and Maine lobster dishes. From the wine cellar, bottles of Romani Conti, priced at $100,000 each, were being carefully transported. Everything was colored with extraordinary luxury. 1 hour before the ceremony, Kim and Emma were guided through the back entrance. "Mom, it's so beautiful." Emma gazed up at the rose arch, her eyes sparkling. Her light blue dress, which Kim had bought by working overtime, wasn't expensive but perfectly matched the color of her eyes. Around her neck hung a small pearl pendant, left by her late father. "Our seats are over there." Kim took her daughter's hand and headed toward the last row. Walking down the aisle, she sighed deeply several times. Why did they have to be treated this way at her sister's wedding? Still, she tried to maintain a smile in front of her daughter. The majestic sound of the pipe organ filled the venue. The attendants entered first to the tune of the wedding march. The audience gasped at their designer brand attire. In the bridal suite, Amber was rushing through her final preparations. Her $100,000 wedding dress, designed by Vera Wong, wrapped around her like delicate snowflakes. Thousands of hand-sewn crystals sparkled in the light. Perfect. Diana gazed at her daughter with satisfaction. Rather than maternal love, her expression showed joy that her plans were succeeding. She herself exuded queenly dignity in her custom dress adorned with a $1 million Cartier tiara. The ceremony proceeded solemnly. Guests held their breath at the bride's pure white dress, shed tears at the exchange of vows, and applauded the ring exchange with blessings. John showed a proud expression to his company executives, fully understanding how much influence this marriage would have on his career. As the reception began and champagne was being poured, Emma whispered to her mother, "Mom, I need to use the bathroom. Will you be okay by yourself?" "Yes." Emma stepped into the hallway, where guests were chatting in small groups. With the posture trained through ballet, she walked quietly toward the bathroom. The scent of expensive perfume and conversations typical of the upper class floated around her. Then it happened. This child. A sudden scream echoed through the hallway. As Emma turned around, a violent slap struck her cheek. Diana's ring left a small cut on her face. "Why did you spill wine on the wedding dress?" Diana's shout stopped all conversation. A large red wine stain spread across Amber's pure white dress. The expensive silk and lace were stained red as if bleeding. I didn't do anything." Emma's anguished cry echoed through the silent hallway. Her cheek was swollen red, and tears filled her eyes. Her hand trembled as she clutched her father's pendant. "Call the police." John shouted. "This dress costs $100,000. We'll demand compensation." His voice carried an almost expectant tone. "Wait." Kim rushed over and embraced Emma. "My daughter would never do such a thing." Amid the chaos of screams and shouts, a hotel staff member stepped forward. His name tag read Michael Collins, head of security. "We can check the security cameras." At those words, the color drained from Diana, John, and Amber's faces. That won't be necessary," Diana's voice trembled. Her lips twitched beneath her perfect makeup. "No, it is necessary," Kim declared firmly. "Let's check the footage to prove my daughter's innocence." As surrounding guests murmured, the group headed to the security room. Emma trembled in her mother's arms, repeatedly saying, "I didn't do it." The Grand Plaza Hotel's security room was normally off-limits to non-staff. The dimly lit room had monitors covering an entire wall, displaying every area of the hotel. "Sarah, call the manager immediately." Chief Michael Collins gave instructions over the intercom. With over 20 years of experience in hotel security, he instinctively knew this situation exceeded routine operations. Minutes later, the manager entered briskly. Though in his mid-60s, this British gentleman's sharp gaze reflected crisis management skills honed through years of experience. "Please explain the situation." The manager's voice resonated in the silent room. Kim held Emma close, while Diana, Amber, and John stood against the far wall. "Yes. I'll check the footage of the hallway incident." Michael quickly operated the keyboard. The large monitor displayed the hallway scene. Emma walking quietly to the bathroom. Then, 2 minutes later. "This is..." The manager frowned. The footage showed Amber and John standing at the end of the hallway, seemingly avoiding attention. John took out a small bottle and poured something on Amber's dress. Immediately after, as if planned, Diana appeared and slapped Emma as she passed by. "We have the evidence," Michael stated quietly. The room fell into frozen silence. "This is a misunderstanding." John raised his voice. "The footage must be tampered with." "I apologize, but our hotel's security system has anti-tampering features," the manager replied calmly. "All footage includes timestamps and digital signatures." "Mother, why?" Kim's voice trembled. Diana momentarily met her daughter's gaze but quickly looked away. Amber sat collapsed, shoulders shaking with tears. "We should contact the police," the manager declared. "This is clearly attempted fraud and assault." "Wait!" Diana cried out. "We can resolve this through discussion. I can prepare the money." "You deliberately hurt a 12-year-old child and tried to frame her," the manager's voice grew stern. "This isn't something that can be settled privately." Security staff moved quickly to seal the hotel's emergency exits and main entrances. Simultaneously, additional guards were positioned at the reception hall to prevent chaos. "Our plan," Amber whispered in despair. "Plan?" Kim stared at her sister. "Is there something else?" Just then, John's smartphone rang. He checked the screen anxiously and his face changed color. "Hello, yes. I understand." After hanging up, John collapsed into a chair as if giving up everything. It was from the insurance company. They've discovered the fraud. The room's atmosphere changed instantly. Insurance fraud. The manager emphasized each word. You were planning to cover the wedding costs with insurance money. Police officers arrived one after another, and questioning of those involved began. Detectives seized the hotel's security camera footage as evidence. Diana, John, and Amber were taken to separate rooms for interrogation. "Emma, are you okay?" Kim gently stroked her daughter's cheek. Though it would leave a scar, fortunately the injury wasn't deep. "Yes." Emma nodded slightly. "But why did Grandma and the others do such a thing?" Kim struggled to find words for that question. How could she help her innocent daughter understand adults' ugly desires? "Sometimes, people make wrong choices," she answered quietly. "But you chose to live honestly. Your father would be proud." Emma nodded silently, clutching her father's keepsake pendant. Hours later, the police investigation revealed shocking facts one after another. William's estate was essentially bankrupt, and Diana carried enormous debt. Carter Investment was also in crisis due to John's fraudulent accounting. The wedding's $3 million cost was planned to be covered entirely by insurance money. The dress damage was part of the insurance fraud, and they thought no one would suspect them if they framed Emma. What a foolish plan. The detective shook his head. As Kim and Emma left the hotel at dusk, the setting sun gently embraced them. The extravagant wedding was cancelled, and the guests had already departed. "Mom," Emma said, looking up at the sky. "What will happen to us now?" "We'll be fine," Kim answered strongly. "We have something more important than money." They began walking hand in hand. The spring breeze caressed their cheeks gently, as if announcing a new beginning. The Special Investigation Unit at the New York State Police Headquarters kept its lights on deep into the night. From mountains of documents on their desks, investigators uncovered shocking facts one after another. "Carol, take a look at this file." Chief Investigator Mark Davis spread a thick file on his desk. With 20 years of experience, this veteran detective had never seen a fraud case of this magnitude. Williams Estate's fraudulent accounting, Carter Investment stock manipulation, and multiple attempted insurance frauds, Davis counted on his fingers. Plus assault and defamation of a 12-year-old girl. This isn't just about a wedding incident. Prosecutor Carol Reedson frowned as she reviewed the file. Specializing in cases involving children, she took particular interest in this case. "What's the estimated total damage?" "Preliminary calculations exceed $50 million, Davis answered. Williams Estate has been inflating sales figures with fictitious real estate transactions for the past 5 years. There's hardly any actual assets remaining. A complex fund flow chart was displayed on the investigation room's large screen. Dozens of related companies and personal accounts were intricately connected, centered around Diana Williams. The issue is motive, prosecutor Reedson continued. Why execute such a high-risk plan at this wedding? The answer became clear during Amber Williams's interrogation. In the police headquarters interrogation room, Amber began telling everything, despite her lawyer's advice. Mother was on the brink of bankruptcy, her voice trembled. But she couldn't accept it. She was afraid of losing everything, her position in society, her friends' trust, everything. Only the sound of the interrogator taking notes echoed in the quiet room. Then John appeared. He seemed to have the perfect solution. Amber's eyes filled with tears. Cover the wedding costs with insurance, use those funds to rebuild the company. Mother's company's debt, his company's fraud, everything was supposed to be resolved. In another room, John Carter had lost his composure. "I'm the victim," he shouted, pounding the desk. "Diana deceived me. I knew nothing about investment fraud." However, email records found on his computer and smartphone showed different facts. Suspect Carter has been systematically executing fraud for 2 years, Detective Davis flipped through documents. He artificially manipulated the investment company's stock prices and swindled about $20 million from individual investors. Diana's interrogation took the longest. She maintained her arrogant attitude until the end but couldn't resist the evidence. Yes, the company was struggling, Diana shrugged. But using that child wasn't planned. That was spontaneous. The security camera footage tells everything, the interrogator stated quietly. The plan to frame Emma was prepared at least a month in advance. Conversation history found on smartphones. There, the plan to trap Emma was meticulously recorded. 3 weeks later, at the New York State Supreme Court. The courtroom was packed with spectators. Media access was restricted, but many reporters gathered in the hallway. Kim held her daughter's hand tightly as she watched her former family members. Prosecutor Reedson stood up. She began explaining the case details in a measured tone. "This case is not merely attempted insurance fraud," she continued, scanning the jury. "It's an inhumane crime attempting to sacrifice an innocent child to protect social status and vanity." The evidence submitted to court was extensive. Hotel security camera footage, detailed fund flow records, messages and emails between involved parties, financial analysis reports by accountants, victim diagnosis reports by psychological counselors. "Our client has contributed to the local community for many years," the defense lawyer pleaded. "Her actions were a temporary lapse in judgment due to financial distress." However, the prosecution's rebuttal was sharp. The defendants tried to use an innocent child to cover up their crimes. Prosecutor Reedson's voice strengthened. "This wasn't an accidental incident, but a planned crime." After 3 days of deliberation, the time for verdict arrived. Diana Williams, 7 years imprisonment, $5 million fine. John Carter, 10 years imprisonment, $10 million fine. Amber Williams, considering cooperation with investigation, 3 years imprisonment with 5 years probation. The defendants are further ordered to pay compensation to the victim for medical expenses and emotional distress, the judge announced. The compensation amount will be determined in a subsequent civil trial. After the sentencing, Prosecutor Reedson visited Kim and Emma. "You did well," she placed her hand on Emma's shoulder. "Your courage revealed the truth." Emma nodded slightly. Holding her father's keepsake pendant, she gazed out the window. The spring sunlight sparkled as if announcing new hope. "So it's over," Kim sighed deeply. "No," Prosecutor Reedson smiled gently. "Your new life is just beginning." The evening light gently fell on the mother and daughter as they left the courthouse. The visiting room at New York State Women's Correctional Facility was always wrapped in silence. Light streaming through iron bars created geometric shadows in the room. "Visiting time is 15 minutes. Prompted by the guard's voice, Amber entered nervously. Her nurse's white uniform created a strange contrast with the prison's gray walls. Mother and daughter faced each other across the visiting room table. Diana Williams, once the dignified queen of a real estate dynasty, had lost her former glory, sitting there in prison garb like any other elderly inmate. "I'm glad you came," Diana's voice had lost its former arrogance. 2 years into her sentence, she spent her days working in the prison library, reflecting on her life. The luxurious mansion, her position in society, everything was now in the past. "How's work going?" "Good. I'm working in the pediatric ward at the General Hospital," Amber nodded slightly. "They're opening a new ward soon. They're going to let me have my own patients to care for." There was a pride in her voice that had never been there before. On probation, she had begun walking her true path as a nurse. Abandoning her mother's dream of marriage to a wealthy husband, she was carving out her own life with her own hands. "Have you seen your sister and Emma?" At that question, Amber lowered her eyes. "Not yet. I'm waiting for the right timing. I did write a letter congratulating Emma on her promotion." Meanwhile, in a quiet residential area in the New York suburbs, spring breezes were pleasantly wafting through Kim and Emma's new home. "Congratulations, Emma." In the living room, a small party was being held to celebrate Emma's starring role in the ballet recital. Her classmates chatted while enjoying homemade cupcakes. Now 14, Emma had grown quite tall. The scar from that incident had become almost invisible thanks to treatment from an excellent plastic surgeon. Even more importantly, Kim was happiest to see that the shadow of anxiety had disappeared from her daughter's expression. "Mom, look," Emma showed her smartphone. "I applied for Juilliard School's summer program." "That's wonderful." Kim hugged her daughter. "Your father would be so proud." Emma touched her father's keepsake pendant and smiled. After the verdict, they were able to purchase a new house with the insurance company's compensation and secure funds for Emma's education. Though modest, it was enough for the two of them. Kim had built a strong reputation as a tax accountant and had also begun volunteer work with a children's rights protection organization. Her experience was becoming a support for families in similar situations. That night, after Emma's party ended, Emma sat next to Kim. "I wonder how Grandma and Aunt Amber are doing." Kim decided to answer her daughter's question honestly. "Grandma is in prison," facing up to her mistakes. I heard Aunt Amber has started a new life as a nurse. I see. Emma gazed into the distance. I don't hate them anymore. I just feel sad, you know. Kim felt tears welling up at her daughter's words showing such maturity. But we have something important, don't we? Kim took her daughter's hand. Not money or status, but a real bond. Emma nodded silently. Outside the window, stars twinkled gently in the night sky. Meanwhile, at New York State Maximum Security Prison, John Carter was writing a letter in his cell. Dear Board of Directors. Even while imprisoned, he continued plotting ways to regain his lost wealth and status. However, no one ever replied to his letters. Time flows steadily, and people change. Diana had started volunteering to read books to children from poor families in the library. Her former arrogance gone, she spent her days in quiet atonement. In the pediatric ward hallway, Amber gently reached out to a child who had lost both parents. Her eyes no longer showed any trace of her former pretense. And Kim and Emma. The two had made it their habit to enjoy picnics in the nearby park every weekend. Though simple, their time together was filled with smiles. Hey, Mom, Emma looked up at the sky. Maybe happiness is closer than we think. Kim nodded at her daughter's words. Expensive dresses, lavish weddings, social status, none of those had been real happiness. What matters is right here. Hearts that care for each other, the courage to live honestly, and above all, an unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. The spring breeze carried the breath of new life. It was like the whisper of angels bringing hope for tomorrow.